Okay, Mayor?
Regarding the intersection, the traffic light for Saddle River Road into the future. Mike Calderon and I were at the county meeting relative to also the Rochelle Park Lodi intersection there. And at that time it was said, the funding future, but they thought it would be about 2 years away. They were speaking of property acquisition over near the diner. They realized that the diner has work going on in progress. Also at the Orange Building. On the spot. And concerns, because we had one of the business owners on the corner there, across from the VFW, concerned about property acquisition there. But that is on the books. It's on the books, it's been recorded, and that's part of the phase-in when we continue with our resolution supporting the four-way intersection. But that will be done in the future, but not soon enough.
Yeah. I'll go on record as saying I would never support any construction there that doesn't include a left turn only lane on every leg, because it just doesn't make sense then. It just gets backed up. I was over actually picking something up at Adam's place, and the traffic on that particular day was backed up. That's at the 7-Eleven. It was just ridiculous. It was a day I think that they had a problem on Route 80 and everyone's getting off, but still, it's just crazy. You have one person trying to make a left turn and they can't, so you need left turn lanes on every leg of that four-way intersection. The other old business is the snow ordinance, and I'm just going to ask Steve, you can get back to Brian. My understanding is that there's two different ordinances, or there's two different parts of our code that reference parking during a snow situation. I believe I had proposed at some point that it be the trigger for getting the cars off the street would be when the plows come out. But there's another portion of our code that says snow covered. Now, I know that we don't have officers like that, but potentially, and technically, you get a 1/4 inch of snow and somebody could just blanket the whole street with no parking during snow. It just doesn't make any sense. I know that our guys would never do that, but still, it's just no reason for it to be like that. No one's moving their car with a 1/4 inch of snow or 1/2 inch of snow. I did speak to Mike Calderon today, and he said that his trigger is 2 inches of snow, that they would send out the plows. Sometimes if it gets icy, they get a call from the police. They'll do the sand and salt ahead of time, but they don't necessarily need the cars to be off, but we would like the cars to be off so they can go curb to curb. 2 inches is the trigger, so I would suggest that we modify everything and make it a strict 2-inch requirement, and then everyone knows. They know there's 2 inches of snow. Obviously, if you hear a plow coming, get your cars off the street, but I think that would work better than just this nebulous snow covered. It just covers everything. It's just too ambiguous, I think. My opinion. So just if we could work on that, and we'll talk about it at the next work session. Try and get that finalized. Okay, that's all I have on police. Welcome to the 3 new officers. December 20th they graduated. They started December 21st. In addressing some concerns, again, I'm not an expert in this, but I do not think there's any prohibition against someone going out as a police officer immediately. There's none that I know of. It may not be the best practice, and again, we leave that up to the wisdom and the experience of the people that run the police department in whether or not to send the new recruits out or whether to have them as ride-alongs. So that's not part of our function here to tell them exactly what to do with the new hires. But we congratulate them and welcome them to the Township of Saddle Brook family. That's it for old business for me. Anybody else with old business? Any new business that needs to be discussed before council comments? All right, council comments. Anybody wants to say anything in response to anything that's been asked or commented on tonight by the public, or just if you have anything else to to add to the meeting.
Andy, I just want to touch on the overtime with the police department that was brought up this evening, and it's been brought up in the past. And I'm going to go back as far as 2006. And some of the information I obtained is from the state police crime report that they put out every year, and the other information I obtained from the township. Okay, so in 2006, there was a total of 34 police officers on the job, according to the state police crime report. The overtime that was paid out in 2006 was $64,535. That's with 34 police officers on the job collecting a salary. Okay, in 2013, there were 22 police officers at one point, and then 3 were hired, so let's say 25, okay, just for argument's sake. And the overtime that was paid out was, like Pete stated before, $274,300. Okay, going back to 2006, the crime rate with 34 police officers was 317. Okay, that's what the state police puts out as a crime index number. In 2013, the number went down to 292, meaning there were less crimes, according to what the state police puts out. So we had less manpower in 2013, but there was less crime. And
Please,
but
this
the
is in fourth
overtime,
grade. Everyone just reserve their comments. It's, we had the public portion.
but the overtime had to be filled. There were positions that needed to be filled. Police officers needed to be out there protecting the town, and that is the reason for the overtime. It's going to happen. And if you compare the 2 years, granted they're 7 years apart, with 34 police officers, the overtime was $64,000. We have 25 police officers, and it's 274. It's a difference of 9 police officers that we didn't have today. So it had to be made up somewhere. And if most of it was at a rate of time and a half,
In 9 years, if you had hired the step, they would have been at making how much?
but overtime is paid at time and a half, and some is paid at double time,
Yes.
depending when it's worked. So that one time, you would still have the police officer. So if you look at that 0.5, that half, that's the extra that we're paying
Without benefits.
without benefits. So it is an expense, but it's cheaper than if you compare it to 2006. There's a savings there. I mean, granted, it's a safety concern of mine for the officers that are out there. I mean, we need more officers out there. We all know that. And they need to back each other up. We need to have adequate backup out there. But we are working on it. And now I'm just going to go through the numbers of police officers from 2006 again. 2006, we had 34. In 2000, again, this is from the State Police Crime Report. In 2007, there were 33 members on the police department. In 2008, there were 31 members on the police department. In 2009, there were 31 members on the police department. In 2010, there were 28 members of the police department. In 2011, 27 members. 2012, 25, and naturally 2013, we went down to 22, and 3 were hired. So for the information that was asked before, that's how many police officers. Now just, again, I'm going to touch on the overtime. We'll go back to 2006. The overtime was $64,000. In 2007, this is the paid out overtime. I'm not counting the overtime that was paid by private contractors, because it doesn't come out of the taxes. It's already paid. It's technically not coming out of the residents' pockets or the taxpayers' pocket. So in 2007, the overtime was $67,659. In 2008, the overtime was $50,275. In 2009 and 2010, respectively, they issued comp time in place of the overtime. In 2009, the overtime that I have on this paper is $16,984. In 2010, it was $20,111. But we do not have the amount of comp time that was given out to these police officers in lieu of the overtime. I don't have that information. In 2011, it was $107,730. In 2012, $144,103. Again, overtime, it's there if you have 34 members, and it's there if you have 22 and 23 members. It's gonna be there. It needs to be paid, we need to protect the residents, and it's not that much of an expense, because you still need that 1.5 times, you're still paying a police officer at that one time, that one. The half is the extra that they're earning. So when we say 1.5 times, you would have a police officer out there no matter what.
So, what else?
And just as far as the recreation budget goes, I have that information here. The total that was in last year's 2013 budget was $80,000. What was paid out for recreation was $69,208.05. Okay, and then there was a balance remaining of $9,713.
And in many years past, the recreation budget was formally 100,000. That was back when I was mayor the first time and on the council. So it diminished and decreased, and yet the program increased. And I never, when I came back in, I couldn't understand how the program's increased, but the dollars allocated in past budgets, but because we had so much to undo and were somewhat deficient in other areas also, we maintained that 80. So budget work sessions, we'll be discussing how the allocation goes into the future, because 20 years ago, there were line items. Football, wrestling, everything was lined out. The commissioners would meet, and everybody would say, okay, this year the football players need new uniforms, next year the cheerleaders, next year the wrestlers need the mats, and we stayed within the line items of each individual category in the budget. Then, as times passed, it became one line item that was distributed in a similar fashion, except at this point it wasn't on paper divided. So my suggestion to the council this year is we perhaps consider going back to individual line items for each, with the understanding that we've had an increase tremendously in soccer. There's been an increase in cheering, and there's new programs that have come on, like street hockey and quite a few others out there. And we're also very deficient for gym space. And with those monies that was on the thermometer that my deceased husband and I started, which is still in the fund for recreation, when I had Lou and Renee as my recreation commissioners, they had gone through endless hours at that time with many parents that were volunteering. We were going to take the garage where I had the vehicles removed and the mess that was there. We found, that's the garage at Veterans Field. We found space for the Field of Horrors because they had no place. We're very land building poor in Saddlebrook. And because of that, we're limited. So even though that former garage was small space, Lou and Renee and I had met with AC people, heating. We met with people to put the tiles on the floor. I call them sponge tiles, but they were for the purpose of the cheerleaders going into practice. We had set up an area, was set up there for the wrestlers to go in and practice. We had price quotes, and this is Lou and Renee, public volunteers, that also had gone and received price quotes on the barrier-free bathrooms. If you go in there, the place it's disgusting. And my hope would be, and my recommendation into this year's new fiscal year, was to start utilizing the funds, and without the benefit of going through in totality, no offense to the engineer or anything, because I know he'd like to build us the Taj, but we can't fit the Taj on that small property. What we need to do is, if we can't move forward with the Board of Education on space for gym space, I know out there it's costing the cheerleader moms extra money. They have to go out of town to rent. The parents not only pay fees, but now we have the spirit cheerleaders, and these girls just love doing this. But gym space minimal. We end up in Lodi, we end up renting in Garfield's, we end up renting in further places, and it doesn't come inexpensively. So we have a lot of work to do, yes, I agree with into the future. It's just that, where are your priorities? We see what we have in front of us with drainage. We talk about rec programs. I'm a firm believer, in addition to rec, what about the arts and the music? We're splitting hairs on dollars. We're talking about the safety of the crossing guards. Well, when I came in this second term around, I brought it to the attention of the council, and I think Andrew was here, Flo was here. They remember back when, and I thought that was the administrator's job to stay on top of it, because after all, he was getting paid $147,000 to $145,000 a year. He should have been phoning the A&P, or whether it be the Home Depot, whether it be the bank, and saying, okay, where's our check this year? This is the safety of our children. But lo and behold, as I stated earlier, government is too slow. We started, we have already, and he can attest to this, made quite a bit of progress, and if not mistaken, we have received some monies in from, I'm not sure if it was the A&P?
Home Depot.
Home Depot. That was an effort that was made through this administration that hadn't gone forgotten. When it comes to the crossing guard safety, the council, myself, implemented the no right turn. I am very proactive with the crossing guards, and that we get the monies. Then when it came to the bank, as Sylvia brought up, they switched and switched and switched, and we're still working on that, because believe it or not, corporate America has the biggest attorneys, and we try to keep our expenses down when it comes to attorneys and litigation. So we're working it through the council, the administrator, my office. Unfortunately, it's taking too long to satisfy me, but we have to go according to the plan and wait and wait and wait for the paperwork and then get on them. So these are issues that were brought to the public by virtue of the public segment this evening, and we have been working on every one of these items that has been brought forward. Thank you.
In regard to the crossing guards, I know that we finally got Home Depot to pay up. Their argument was that they shouldn't have to pay because they were closed down. We got them to pay. We're getting in discussions with A&P, which unfortunately was protected through bankruptcy protection, and we're in negotiations with them in regard to the TD Bank, because like the mayor said, they switched 5 different names, and the corporation now, the parent corporation, is in Canada. So the local people, Tony over at the local 4 Lane branch, gave us information on who to contact, and we now have been in contact with them, and through legal counsel, we're going to be working on that. In regard to trying to answer some of the questions that were brought up, first thing on the overtime, I know Anthony did a great job talking about it. Yes, outside overtime, Mr. Rodriguez asked a question and I was trying to answer, but there was $92,000 in outside overtime, and just be advised that none of that comes from the town. That all comes from outside vendors, and what we instituted, I think 2 years ago, was we changed it. It had been 10% on top of the overtime would come to the town, like an administrative fee. We changed that to 20%. So whatever vendor, let's say PSE&G, let's say this was all PSE&G, they spent $92,000. The town actually gets $18,000. They pay the whole 92, and they pay the town $18,000 for the use of our guys. Yes, it is $274,000. It's a lot of money, But just so we're aware, it's not as if we put an extra tax on people or some kind of surcharge or tariff. It was a transfer. There was money available in other accounts that we saved through the garbage and other accounts. So there was a transfer. It wasn't the budget. There was zero budget impact on the overtime that was paid out. There have been no studies done. No one has ever presented anything that said if we had 5 more guys, we'd have less overtime. It kind of abstractly makes sense, but we don't know. But remember, those 5 people at an average, just even beginner salary, $50,000 apiece, that's $250,000. That's it equals out over there. And just one time, I mean, the council gets blamed for this all the time, and there is no blame. Overtime happens. I don't care if you had 100 men and women on the police department, there would be overtime because there's sick days. And in this particular year, we had one officer who had a sudden illness and has not been with us for 9 months. Hopefully we'll get him back. We had another one who was out for 2 or 3 months with a broken leg. And I can tell you, Lieutenant Burns, when he retired, that was something that we didn't know about 6, 7, 8 months in advance. That was kind of a shock. You may have had some notice. I'm not saying he came in and no one knew about it, but maybe a month, 2 months max. So there were a couple of things that went against us this year with the 3 new officers, and hopefully everyone stays healthy next year. We don't anticipate seeing this again. In terms of Caldwell, again, Mr. Rodriguez had mentioned about the taxpayer money. It's actually monies that were paid by developers. There was no taxpayer money that was used to purchase that piece of property. That was money set aside, and it's COLA money. We had to use that because the governor was threatening to take it away from us. And the council, as a group, decided that it was better to spend that $850,000 on something rather than lose it. So we made what we felt was a purchase that we felt and still feel will be beneficial to the town. In regard to health benefits, we did get something back from our benefit coordinator that there will be a decrease of 2.5% this year from last year, which is savings of approximately $50,000. We are still in negotiations, but it looks like at a minimum we're going to be saving $50,000 from last year. And last year there was no increase from the year before. Mr. Mucci mentioned something about a rec director. We've talked privately on that, and it's no secret that I think that we need a rec director. I don't think there's any doubt that we need a rec director. And I will push that in the budget there is money for a rec director. I give all the credit in the world to people that have done it in the past, starting with Hank Finchen and Mike DeVito, Lou Verilli, Renee DeMaria.
Me?
Currently,
I was
Karen Chamberlain, I
years
don't go
ago.
back that far.
Not that old, Andrew.
Currently Jerry Taylor, that have done an amazing job volunteering to do that. It's a thankless job, and it's probably one of the most difficult jobs. I will push for that, I can guarantee you. If it's not in the books for full-time this year, certainly at a minimum, we need a part-time person to just get this thing up and running. I would prefer, if we can do it, a full-time person who obviously would be qualified. And I would suggest and recommend that that person is not from this town, so we can get away from the politics, the I know you, you know me. It just makes it easier for that person, and it just makes it easier for the town, because that person doesn't know, there's no baggage there that they'll know about. I also agree with Adam, again, the amount of pay I don't know, but certainly it's got to be a fair wage. Veterans Field, I got tossed out of a meeting when Veterans Field was being discussed because I was totally against it, but it's there. I felt exactly what you said, that if we can get along with the Board of Ed. The problem was that people, and a particular person, would go to Board of Education meetings and stir the stuff, let's put it that way. Didn't make any friends with the Board of Ed. There was no way in hell that this council not this, but the council at that time was gonna work with the Board of Ed, and there's no way that the Board of Ed was gonna work with this council. It just was a bad, bad situation. I think it's a totally different situation. I appreciate Marilyn's here from the Board of Ed. There's a different relationship now. If it happened now, I'm sure that we would have lights there that would be turfed, and we'd have 3 or 4 fields. East Rutherford did it. I mention East Rutherford a lot because I'm there. They spent a decent amount of money, but they had everything together, and they do their high school and their rec. And everybody, believe it, you know, for years, everyone said, oh, we're gonna play over at Beckton. It's a great thing, and I agree. Hasbrook Heights turfed their field. We are going to try and do what we can, but we can't undo the past. Veterans Field is built, and you know what? We're gonna make the best of it, and hopefully we can make that into a top-notch facility also. Somebody asked about appointments, whether there's a conflict. There's no real conflict unless there's money involved. I mean, we've had mayors who've had children working for the town, and council people who've had children working for the town, getting paid for an appointment, a volunteer appointment. There's nothing wrong with that. We appreciate it. A lot of times we can't even get people to fill these volunteer positions. It was brought up about the 10-minute rule, and it was basically asked me as the incoming council president, whether I will change that. I will not change that. I think that 10 minutes is a sufficient period of time, and I think it worked out tonight that people give comments, and that's what it's for. It's not a debate, it's not a question and answer session, it's not an inquisition. We'll try and get you the information. Like I said, 99% of the stuff, just ask Pete. And if he doesn't give you the answer, then come and complain to us and say he's not giving it, and we'll make sure we get it. But other towns, I know Mawa has a 5-minute max, and I think Oakland has 3 minutes and a total of 30 minutes for everyone. So Hackensack, I believe, has 5, and they are in consideration of going down to 3. Certainly not gonna lessen it, but I'm not gonna increase it. It's been felt that it's working pretty good, the 10 minutes. We talked about, sorry?
Can I
Yes.
just cut in on one
Certainly.
issue? It would be very helpful, at least from our office standpoint, if members of the public want information, we're available all the time. We have email. We certainly get mail, and we don't throw mail away. And I can bring whatever documents, or Mr. Chakowski can bring whatever documents are necessary if members of the public want information, if they give us some notice. We don't want to hide anything, and we'll be happy to bring anything for discussion, but a lot of times if I get asked for information on the spot, I don't bring my files with me. So that would be my request. That goes along with the 10-minute limitation on the public participation. It would be very helpful.
And just, I mean, it's a small town. We all know each other. You're not here. You pretty much can stop at my house if you need something. You can call me, cell phone, email, almost all of this stuff, we're readily accessible. Don't stop too late at night, but I think that we are all accessible. You know, we live here, and you know, our kids grew up with your kids. So that being said, I don't think I had anything else. Oh, just wanted to let people know that the next meeting, this new meeting schedule, it's going to be the first Thursday of the month, starting next month, so it's February 6th. The work session will be Tuesday, February 4th. The regular meeting, the work session will be 6:30 on Tuesday, February 4th, and the regular council meeting will be at 7 o'clock on Thursday, February 6th. Anything?
Thank you, Andrew. Wow, I mean, I think you covered everything. But I just have a few things pertaining recreation. I am a big advocate for recreation. I've been involved in it a long time. I've seen a lot of success with our recreation programs, including this year. And I do feel that the participants, the athletes, should be recognized. I mean, they accomplish things way beyond people's dreams, and you don't just sweep it under a carpet and say there's no time for it, because I do feel there should be allotted time for some of our athletes to be recognized. We're moving on now, we're into the winter programs. I do wish all the winter programs the best of luck in the upcoming season. Our high school wrestling team, it's a co-op with Glen Rock. They've been very, very, very successful. They've put out some top-flight wrestlers, and they're off to a great season this year. They're dual meets, they're 4-0 already. I don't think you can get any better than that. And our recreation wrestlers, that's where it all begins, that's where it starts. It's a lot of time from coaching aspect. You want to talk about facilities, I've been using my own truck to move the mats from Franklin School to the high school. And I'll be honest with you, if you look at my truck carrying the mats, they look like they're going to fall out of the back of the truck. But this is what we do to make things fly with what we have, okay? And for the recreation wrestlers, it's their Skip Bailey tournament Sunday. It'll be at the high school from 8 in the morning, usually goes to about 4 in the afternoon. So if anyone wants to come by and support the young kids, please drop by and support them. That's where it begins, and we do have a lot of real good recreation wrestlers that will be moving up into the high school. Other than that, I'd like to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and let's move on 2014 positively. Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes. Adam, I too feel your frustrations. And I drive around town and I'm always looking for a location or something that we can do for the children. I hope that we'll work diligently. Your ideas were great. And I really, look forward to working with my fellow councilmen to move forward. We are making strides. We did change some of the policies and the best practices that we were supposed to change stuff. So we are making as far as the recreation. I'd like to congratulate also Doug Haberman for becoming the new fire chief to go over. And regarding my son's appointment, yes, he does have the lucky distinction of being my son related to me, but he holds a plumbing, building, subcode, construction code licenses, so he is an asset, and I believe that the fellow councilman did see that also. And I'd like to wish everyone a happy and healthy new year.
Lastly, congratulations, I don't think we mentioned it, Doug Haberman's our new fire chief, and Tom Dickman is the deputy chief. Assistant chief, I'm sorry.
Yes.
With that being said, I'll entertain a motion to...
Go into closed session.
Oh, I'm sorry, motion to go into closed session. We have some legal issues to resolve in closed session, and personnel issues, I'm sorry.
Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Brook desires to meet for the purpose of a closed session to discuss personnel, contract negotiations, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act does make an exception and allows a public body to hold a closed session. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Brook that the closed session will take place on January 9, 2014 at 7:00 p.m. For sooner after as the matter can be reached at the municipal building, be closed to the public and to the press, and that the results of the discussion of the closed session will be released to the public and the reasons